Hello and welcome to the Ultimate Freight Podcast. This is Joe Gianosa with Ultimate Logistics, Inc., here to guide you through these choppy freight waters. Okay, the holidays are over, and we were expecting a little bit of a dip for pricing after some people were done shipping, after some things were done getting backed up from the holidays, right? We were all expecting that. And then truck drivers were like, whoa, look at all this money we have now. Holy cow. So a lot of them got lazy and decided, hey, I don't want to drive in the snow. I don't want to work right now. So the shortage of drivers stayed short. And there was a lot of drivers taking time off. So the prices kind of stayed like not as high as Christmas week, obviously, but you saw it go up like this. Then we're expecting it to come down here with less freight, but instead of coming down here, it came like right there, and it's been leveling off. Then, okay, fine. Then everyone started getting COVID in January and early February. Then California's like, hey, you know what? Let's get rid of these masks restrictions, right? COVID's over. People are thinking COVID's over. Truckers start running out of money, all the freaking money they've made. And they're like, cool, let's get back to work. And you start seeing prices go like that, especially like going down to Los Angeles. It's been a little bit cheaper, right? There's a little bit less freight coming out of Northern California because produce season's over. And there's more freight coming out of Los Angeles. More people want to come to Los Angeles, right? All these things are happening in a good way. And then freaking World War III decides to happen. Now, I hope that actually doesn't happen. I'm being a little bit facetious. But this is getting a little out of hand, and Putin's crazy. So let's talk about this. And there's a Forbes magazine article that came out yesterday that kind of explains what this might mean for transportation and gas and things like that. But geopolitical politics could come into play here as far as our transportation systems and the global supply chain, obviously. Never before have more countries been dependent on each other for certain supplies and gas and natural resources and things like that. And surprisingly, Russia is a huge proponent of mineral fuels, oils, and natural gas, which sucks. Actually, United States imports of these things from Russia. That's the number one thing we import from Russia by a multiple of 10 from every other thing that we get from Russia. And it's fuel, mineral fuels, and distillation products. We got $18 billion worth of stuff from them last year. And they actually supply a lot of Europe's natural gas. So unfortunately, Putin decided to put 150,000 troops in Ukraine along Ukraine's borders, and Thursday morning started attacking, unfortunately. And of course, thoughts and prayers to the Ukrainian citizens. It's horrible. I think the death count is now over 200, which is nuts. It's just going to keep rising. And it's all because Putin wants Ukraine and doesn't recognize them as a state, recognizes them as part of Russia. I think Putin's getting older and cares about his legacy, and he's doing things he's always wanted to do because he's like, screw it, I'm going to die pretty soon anyways. So let's get into it. So Putin does not recognize Ukraine as a real country. He recognizes it as part of the Russian Federation. And if you look at everything here, 50% of Germany's annual consumption of gas and natural gas actually comes from Russia, a Russian pipeline. Oil prices have already jumped. They're over $105 per barrel. And Biden came out with a speech yesterday talking about sanctions against Russia. And one of the things that people assumed would happen is that they get banned from SWIFT. And SWIFT is the international banking system to help all financial industries in the world talk to each other so everyone can do global business with each other. And the European Unions and the G7, especially a lot of people in the G7 want to ban Russia from SWIFT, from basically ban Russia from doing any kind of business, being able to accept payments or pay anyone outside of their own country for all kinds of different goods. Biden did not pull the trigger on SWIFT. I think the reason for that is you need all the G7 nations to be on board. Germany is heavily in bed with Russia. And so you need all 7 nations to be on board. Germany looks like it's the one that's kind of backing out and saying, hold on a second, this is going to cause a lot of problems here, because Germany is heavily in bed financially with Russia, and they have their own interests. So $105 a barrel, the gas price, the oil prices jumped up to, and we haven't seen that in a while. So fracking in the United States has happened, and we are actually the largest producer of oil, but we still get a ton of oil from Russia. And so if we're cut off from Russia and doing business with Russia, that is going to put a strain on the amount of fuel in our fuel supplies that we have, which could affect fuel prices at the pump. You're already starting to see it. Biden actually mentioned it in his speech, talking about, hey, we really need our oil companies here in the United States and our gas companies to not kill our customers at the pump as far as pricing goes, and hopefully they don't take too much of an advantage. In terms of transportation, it's not just about fuel prices either. And Forbes goes on to say a provider of real-time transportation visibility solutions called Fourkites does a lot of big data, and they apply human expertise and machine learning to big data to predict estimated times of arrival with pricing and things like that. And it says carriers, freight forwarders, and shippers that are dealing with the China to North America trade lanes were already operating in crisis mode. Remember, we had all that backup happening on the seas. There's still a bunch of wait time at the ports. We're already in crisis mode. And it says the invasion will create major new constraints on Asian ocean and air exports with spot container pricing. Man. So let's see. It says those shipments, there's a lot of stuff getting sent by rail. That rail might stop in the European Union. And it says, let's see, 336,500 TEUs were transported from China to the EU by rail in the first 6 months of 2021. That is 44% more than 2020 and 99% more than in 2019. Those shipments need to go by ocean or more expensive air if ship berths cannot be found. So the railroads all clogged up. People are looking for air and ocean instead. But because of this, they're predicting rates will skyrocket for ocean and air. I hope you're sitting down. They're predicting ocean is going to increase 2 to 3x from $10,000 a container to $30,000 per container. And that air freight spot rates and lead times are going to increase 3 to 4 times. Also, electricity prices may go up. The rising gas prices drive up the price of transportation. Rising natural gas prices also affect the global supply chains. Natural gas has become increasingly important in generation of electricity. And in the United States, for example, natural gas accounted for 40% of our total utility scale of US electricity generation. So rising electricity prices can cut into profits for manufacturers, distributors, retailers who are reliant on this form of energy for powering their facilities. So energy costs increase, and in turn, often lead these companies to raise their prices. This is particularly true in Europe, where Russia is the largest provider of natural gas to Europe, providing about 35% of its supply. So it goes on to talk about liquid gas and raw material commodity supply chains. So there's a company called Interos. That's a company providing supply chain risk management solutions and analytics. And they go on to say, while the impacts of disruption of trade between the United States and Europe and Russia and Ukraine are minuscule in comparison to the disruption of trade with China that occurred because of the pandemic, the impacts are not insignificant. More than 21,000 US-based firms and 12,000 European firms have at least one direct supplier in Russia. More than 450 firms in the United States and 200 in Europe have tier one suppliers in Ukraine. Also, software and IT services account for 13% of supplier relationships between United States and Russia/Ukrainian companies. So consumer services represented another 7%, and about 6% account for trading and distribution services, and 4% for industrial machinery, oil, gas, steel, metal products that are used for everyday kind of manufacturing. In terms of trade, these are not critical, but these are inputs needed in manufacturing. So the rise of steel, copper, the conflict the conflict could squeeze the metal markets. Russia controls roughly 10% of global copper reserves and is also a significant provider of nickel and platinum. And nickel's been trading at an all-time 11-year high lately. Then you have cyber wars that can happen, and everyone knows Russia's capable of that, and has done that to Ukraine in the past and the United States. That could have cyber warfare could have another impact on this stuff. So the other thing too is what could happen is basically if Russia's cut off from doing business with SWIFT, they could be forced to say, okay, fine, we'll find another supplier, another buyer of our stuff, which could be China. And if Russia syncs up with China and becomes an ally with China, and if China takes this opportunity to invade Taiwan, you're looking at real freaking World War III here. And I don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that, obviously, but that is something to pay attention to as far as supply chain goes. The sanctions are already happening. The gas prices are already going up. There are a ton of Russian drivers around the United States, and I mean a ton. And I don't think any of them are gonna, they're actually getting real information from the United States. Okay. I don't think that's anything to worry about. They're actually getting real information, not propagandic information, from Russia. So, I don't see any Russian truck drivers saying, oh, we're not going to haul in support of Russia or anything crazy like that. But what I do see is a strain on the supply chain for sure. Hopefully this is a short kind of conflict. It doesn't keep escalating. But Biden did say that if these sanctions didn't work, then he'll go ahead and entertain a SWIFT ban, which is the nuclear financial option. Unfortunately, all these bans are hurting the Russian people and the Russian citizens. And there's a ton of Russian citizens who do not agree with this. And it's the Russian citizens that are getting hurt. And that's what I really feel bad for in their financial system, their businesses. Putin himself isn't getting hurt at all. So all these sanctions and everything, they're hurting the country, sure, but they're hurting its people. And people are actually trying to protest in the streets in Moscow, and guess what's happening to them? So they're getting taken off the streets right away, and God knows what's happening to them in prison. So thoughts and prayers go out to this whole situation. Hopefully it gets resolved soon. Hopefully it does not escalate. United States is sending troops over to the Ukraine right now, and just know they're not over there to fight against Russians. They're out actually there to help get Ukrainian citizens out of there, so the casualties, innocent casualties, don't keep going up. But if you have a United States jet flying over, or a B-52 or something like that trying to get in, and that gets shot down, it's game on. If any of the NATO countries get invaded by Russia, it's game on. And we're sending United States troops over there to actually fight. That's when actual World War III will happen. World War III hasn't happened yet, but a couple of things need to happen in order for it to do so. And if those happen, you can easily see that it could happen. So hopefully it doesn't. That is that's what's going on in the geopolitical world, and what this could actually mean for transportation. It's crazy. It's been a crazy last 2 years dealing with the pandemic. It seemed like we had light at the end of the tunnel, and now we have to deal with this. It's absolutely nuts. Hopefully it dies down and we see the light at the end of the tunnel soon. I will keep coming at you with updates on the escalation in Europe and what this can do to affect our transportation. Until then, I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.